as a minister, my sermons were never over 20 minutes.
Bless your heart.
My philosophy was the longer a guy preaches, the less he's prepared. So anyway, I've tried to prepare this real well. I have an outline, 2 reasons. 1, to keep me on track, and 2nd, to help you know when you need to start waking up. So it's kind of 2 purposes here. I want to talk about confessions of an overconfident writer. Begin with a couple of questions first. How many of you are published authors?
My goodness.
Wow, okay. How many of you have a goal of getting published? All right, I want to speak to both groups, and I think I have some information that will be helpful for both groups. I want to, my outline for this is the revelation, the reasoning, and the resolution. All right, revelation. What got my attention? In March 2021, I was part of the Springfield Writers Guild nonfiction genre critique group. And I thought I would bless them by letting them read some of my research writing, which I enjoyed, and I thought it would benefit them and make their day. Well, we only had about 4 or 5 in the group, and they had read it ahead of time. And Wayne Groner, who was my dear friend and introduced me to the Writers Guild years ago, he started out really cutting me down. He said, you have a very boring introduction, you have repetitive phrases, and you lack creativity in your writing style. Now, Wayne's a friend of mine. And I mean that seriously. He was saying those things in an attempt to help me, not to hurt me, but to help me be a better writer. And that's an important part of mentoring. Now, I wanted to be sure and include this. Do you know how long our dear friend Nick has led the mentoring hour for the Writers Guild? This is his 16th year. I think he has set the real good standard for what good mentoring is. It's to help us be better writers, not to just criticize and be mean, but to help us. Well, this group and all the other people agreed with Wayne about my writing. Well, I was at first bothered by that. Wasn't used to that, and especially from a friend like Wayne, just making those comments. But then it came to the point when I really thought about it, and Wayne sent me an article that from another writer who would give me some good ideas on how to have a better introduction, more creative style. It was really helping me, and I appreciated that. But I finally had to come to the understanding what they were saying was right. And I wasn't used to that. Now, the other question I have for you, do writers have big egos? Don't raise your hand. You know the answer to that. All right. And then I was going to ask, who has the biggest ego, a writer or a minister? But I won't go there. So, anyhow, I had to overcome my ego. And I think that's an important step for us who are published authors. At times, we need to step back and look at what we're doing and check our egos. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that we can't rely just on some of the good reviews of our past writing. I've had the privilege of sharing some stories I've written for the mentoring hour here, and they've been well received. A lot of good comments. I enjoy the research, introducing unique new facts, and that's an important part of my writing. I think it was also very helpful in some of the other writer groups I belong to, in some of their sessions on how to be a better writer. And I can learn from those. We are constantly learning as writers. We don't have it made. And I think sometimes we have that real mistake. We have to deal with our ego. Just because we have written well in the past doesn't ensure we're going to be doing it right now and in the future. So we need to step back. Now, that was the revelation I had, and it was kind of shocking. Thank you.
Amen, brother.
Bless you. Yes. Prior to speaking. All right. Now, the reasoning. Why did I have those thoughts about my own writing? First of all, I had overconfidence from past awards and critiques of earlier works. As I said, I've had reviews here in the mentoring hour that were very positive and good. Doesn't ensure what I'm doing right now is going to get positive and good reviews. So I need to be careful and not to have overconfidence in that. I have been spoiled as an author. I don't know if I've shared with you before, but I am one of the rare people who've had a publisher contact me about wanting to publish one of my books. I've heard of others who sent 100 different feelers out and maybe get one that's positive. Well, I've been spoiled. I've had a writer in Oklahoma understand you're writing a biography about this person. Yes. Well, I'd like to read it and we'd like to publish it. Sure. Well, that was the start of 8 other books with that publisher. The publisher here in Missouri, the Missouri Life magazine, editors there knew I was doing a book on the history of Fort Leonard Wood. They asked if they could publish that. Well, sure. Well, they got tied up in another big project they were on and asked if their associate publisher in Sikeston, Missouri, Acclaim Press, if I would mind if he published it. And I said, no. So anyhow, I've been spoiled. I've had publishers contact me, which is really unusual. Future writers, don't rely on that. Okay. I have had the fortune of publishing now 14 books. I have 2 books coming out this summer, knock on wood. I have 3 others with the publisher in preparation to being sent to writing houses. I have co-authored 3 other books, and I have edited 5 books for friends of mine. I've received 7 awards, 2 of them from this organization, which I don't know if they were deserved, but no other good candidates, I guess, was the conclusion. But anyhow, I had those, all that told me you are a good writer. And I think that overconfidence was detrimental to me. I was trying to complete multiple projects too quickly. Anybody else have more than 2 or 3 works going on at the same time? You know what I mean? Sometimes you just want to hurry and get them over with and you neglect good writing. That was kind of my problem also. I think I was trying to impress my publisher with output instead of the reader with creativity and good writing. Sometimes we make that mistake, at least I have. I think I was more concerned with building my resume than building on the quality of my writing. We've had some good programs here, and I've been fortunate to be with other writing groups. Good programs on how to be a better writer. And I take notes on all those, but did I really take the time to step back? What are you doing? Are you applying those things? So that was kind of important. I was overconfident with past awards, trying to complete multiple projects too quickly. I was becoming too dependent on my publisher's editorial corrections. Why do I need to go back and worry about a lot of this stuff? They've got an editing staff. They're going to send me suggestions. They'll make corrections. I don't have to worry about it. Big mistake. I learned two things from the past. For one thing, as a writer, I am responsible for the quality of my writing. I can't depend on an editing staff. The other thing is I am responsible for promoting my work. Nobody else is going to do it effectively. So those two things for you future writers, you need to understand. You're responsible for the quality of your work. And you're also responsible eventually for promoting that work once it's published. Now, I thought I was such a good writer, I didn't need to be concerned with writing third or fourth drafts. That's kind of dumb. I'm too good. The editorial staff will pick up on that. Skip it. Don't worry about that. And that was a real problem. I think also I was satisfied with good content aside from good writing skills. I think that is very important for us to understand. I love research. The research I did on books like Missouri Innovators and others was just so much fun, learned so many new things, and wanted to share the new knowledge I had to the exclusion of looking at the quality of the writing. Kentucky Innovators, which is supposed to be out in August, that book, the section from that is what I shared with the nonfiction genre group, and that I learned quickly. You got into this trap thinking you're so good you don't need to go back and look at what you've written and improve on it. So become satisfied. I think I was wanting to impress the reader with my research to the exclusion of impressing the reader with good writing. We should be able to do both. And that's the challenge I think I had to come to grips with. I think I was neglecting the effective presentation of the new material. I was so excited about content. I didn't want to take the time to go back and really look at the quality of its presentation. So that's the revelation of the reasoning. Now the resolutions. What were my resolves? First, I needed to reevaluate the advice to writers that I had given when I was able to give past presentations. And I've got 7 steps that I would try to encourage writers to follow. The first step, and this is kind of a review, but I think it's good even for us published writers to step back and look at all of this again. Research the ideas. I like to go on Amazon or Google and research my ideas to see if there are other books written about this, if there are other projects underway, whatever we can, find out the background. You may have a totally new thing. I was absolutely shocked that there had never been a book written about the history of Fort Leonard Wood. Shocked. And there have been over 1 million people go through there. So again, there was a real need for that. I had the privilege of spending a lot of time on base and getting a lot of help and doing research and writing with that. So again, check and see what's out there. You may have an idea that no one has ever explored or tried to put into print. Go for it. All right. Second, write the first draft. Just get your ideas down on paper. As I had state later, I heard a publisher from New York say, don't be afraid to write a lousy first draft. Everybody does. Get your ideas down on paper. You've got other people that can help you, make you look like you're a good writer in the months ahead. So get that first draft down. It's very, very important. It doesn't have to be lengthy. You can maybe find other research and get other help in adding more content to it. But get the first draft down. Step 3, secure dependable proofreaders to make initial corrections. And here is where I think the mentor groups come in. The session we've just gone through the past hour was very helpful, certainly to the writers that submitted. But I think it's also helpful to the rest of us. My writing, am I doing this? And do I need to go back and look at this again? So I think it is very, very helpful. I think it's important that we respond in the mentoring hour. If all you do is put down at the end of the last page, well, I didn't hate it. With mentoring, I enjoyed the reading. I found a few mistakes, but hey, overall, I really enjoyed the content. So participate in the mentoring, not just submission, but in responding also. And I'm really glad we have a group that's helpful and as good as that. One of the other questions I wanted to ask, how many of you are nonfiction writers? All right, a few. Now, Tim is the head of our Springfield Writers Guild genre group. If you are not a part of that, email Tim and tell him you want to be a part of that. Mentoring is great. Mentoring hour with 40 or 50 people is super, but it's nothing like having 5 or 6 people in your genre who are similar writers and can help you. It's more personal. I think it's a lot more helpful in some ways. So I would encourage you, become a part of the genre group. We have several, you hear reports later on today, but join with the genre group, and the mentoring, I think, is very, very important. All right, the 4th step, write a second draft with corrections made and add other creative writing that you need to do. Kind of build on that first draft, build on the suggestions from mentoring. Do what you can to improve your writing. Remember what you have learned from other writing speakers. Begin to incorporate some of those. We have a real good one, a writers group, and they've had a continuing session on showing, don't tell in your writing. Very helpful. And I constantly have looked back on some of my past writing. Boy, I should have done it differently instead of just told, showed in a more personal way. Step 5, secure additional proofreaders or editors for suggestions and corrections. If you're self-publishing, you need to be sure and get some outside help. Spend a little money and get a good editor to help you make your writing look like it's good writing. Then step 6, write a 3rd draft with other suggestions and corrections made from different sources. And then step 7, write a 4th draft with publisher-specific requirements in mind. Know what your publisher is expecting. I was surprised and pleased to know most of the traditional publishers require you to submit your form in Microsoft Word and on a Macintosh, because that's what they use in their offices. So kind of know what they're expecting and what would help you. And then I think the other resolution was to consider completion of each project on a qualitative basis. And I have down, quit thinking after step 4 you finished your work. You have. That's where that overconfidence comes in. I've been so good, I don't need to do step 5, 6, and 7. I heard a wonderful phrase that said, don't arrive before you get there. And I think sometimes as writers, we're guilty of that. So again, be prepared for a lot of patience. And then I have used the same advice you give to others, use it for yourself. So that's also, I think, an important statement. Third, forget any personal calendar pressure. I attended one conference. A poor lady was writing, I think, youth fiction, and she had done so well. Her publisher now was after her. He wanted her to produce a completely new book every 6 months. I couldn't imagine that. Me, with research and other stuff, kind of writing I do, if you're doing it within 2 years, you're pushing it. So again, be careful about calendar pressure. Set your own pace. Take some breaks. Find inspiration. My favorite story, Christmas Carol, the author, that story, he was under pressure from a publisher. He had just produced a famous novel. Publisher said, I want you to write one about Christmas. He threw a blank. One night, he decided in London that he would walk through a graveyard. And there was very poor lighting. And he happened to notice a tombstone. And the tombstone talked about a guy, last name was Scrooge. And it said, he thought it said he was a bad person. But it had something, but he misread that. But anyhow, it just dawned, Scrooge, a bad person, Christmas, bingo, and he had his inspiration. Sometimes take a break. Walking through one of the cemeteries, I saw my favorite tombstone. All it said on it was, I told you I was sick. I would love to know the backstory. But anyhow, do some exploring, walk around, find new things. So anyhow, some reminders. And again, I'm keeping it about 20 minutes here. So as I said, don't be afraid to write a lousy first draft. If you got an idea, get it down. To me, the saddest book ever written is the book never written. You've had a good idea, but you haven't followed through. That's sad to me. Several phrases that have helped me in recent years. In working a jigsaw puzzle, you need to sort all of the pieces, plan a strategy before you start putting the pieces together. Now, how many of you like to work jigsaw puzzles? I love it. I've got one now whenever I can find the space and the time, 12,000 pieces.
Wow.
And I don't have the space for it because I think it's about 8 by 12 feet once it's all put together. Anyhow, there's a strategy in working jigsaw puzzles, and you need to kind of plan ahead for that. And then the one that I love, I'm writing a first draft, reminding myself that I'm simply shoving sand into a box so that later I can build sandcastles. I love that. That, I think, is a wonderful concept of what we're doing as writers, regardless of the genre. Now, summing up, one thing I want to encourage you to do, get involved in one of our genre groups, especially helping and mentoring with the genre groups. Very, very important. And then be active in our mentoring hour. Write comments and respond to that. Nick's done it for 16 years, leading us in that. I think we can, I dared to ask him about how many stories do you think he's presented for mentoring in 16 years. Who knows? I would say anywhere from 700 to 1,000 stories. So we have done some things that have really helped authors, and you and I have helped with that. So as I tell my class, when I'm done, I'm done.
Any questions? I had a conversation with, for those who went to the conference last weekend, Stephen James was our keynote. He's a very well-published author, well-known, international best-selling. I asked him about his process. And he writes by the hour. Most of us write by the word, correct? He writes by the hour. He says, I can get, if I work 10 hours, I feel like I've accomplished something, even though I may have only written one word. I thought it was an interesting concept, is the quality of, he said, chasing word count can lead you to bad first draft. He said, if you write quality for 10 hours, you'd probably be more productive than chasing a word count. I thought that was interesting perception on how to do it. I can't do it that way. I have to do word count. But I thought it was an interesting observation by a man who's very successful at what he does.
That is interesting.
Anything else?
Pastor, I want to ask, this kind of question is kind of coming out of left field, granted. I wanted to ask you, relative to being a pastor and going against the issues of pride, okay? How do you reconcile, maybe it's not reconciliation, but how do you get past the push and pull of the enemy, saying, look at me, look how hot I am. I'm not saying that you are, but bringing spiritual warfare into this and to the success that we enjoy or that you have enjoyed as a writer. How is that tempered in your life as a pastor and with the success that you have had as a writer?
Interesting question. I think part of that is I look back on the writers and the books of the Bible. No perfect people. They make mistakes. Some of them confess it. I think by the fact that God used those imperfect people with His perfect word says a lot to me. There's hope for me. I think I can rely on my knowledge and the help in the entering, but I think there's that also very important part of my relationship with God. Am I asking Him for help and guidance? I would like to write a book on all of the instances as I look back on divine guidance, and things that have just fallen into my lap, totally unexpected. All I can do is say it's God. I went to a courthouse in the middle of Oklahoma in July, looking for some records of the public school education back in 1907. And people on the first floor of the courthouse looked at me and went, what? Public school records, 1907. And I said, well, I think they're up on the third floor, but no one's been up there for years. So anyhow, they took me up there, and it was a huge, huge room, storage room. And they said, there may be something, and it wasn't air conditioned. Maybe something over in the very far corner. So I went over there, and I looked, and I saw a book labeled Public School Records, 1907. I opened it, and on the second page was the very guy I was looking for. And by coincidence, the woman who married was also a teacher 3 lines down from his name. I could go on and on and on about all those amazing things. You got to be careful as a minister too. I'll have to confess, I'm doing confessions. The very first mentoring group I went to when we moved back to Missouri, there was a minister, and we had some writing, and there were about 12 of us, I think, in the room, and it was really bad. And he asked for comments. Well, I didn't know any better. I just said, well, there's a lot of misspellings, and you keep using the same word over and over. The grammar's kind of poor. And he just stopped and he slammed the desk. I said, how dare you? I said, what? And he said, God gave me those words. And when I shut up, I didn't. And he said, well, then all I can say is God's a really bad speller. Picked up his paper and left the room. So you gotta be careful. I hope that answers the question. Yes.
It reminds me of the scripture in Proverbs that says, the horse is made ready for the battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. So the greater the work from the talent is given us, the more humble we can bow our knee, because it comes from the great creator, our Lord.
And I guess one of the dangers of overconfidence is we pretty much get a big head and think we're just pretty good. Sure.
So you got your first publisher, and you gave them your manuscript, and then they started editing it. Did they in any way communicate to you that they were taking a liberal hand, or that, or what, you know, or maybe your work just wasn't as bad as you're kind of professing it to be?
No, it was that bad. But, every publisher I've had allows me, they make suggestions, and I have the right to accept it or reject it. 99% of the time, they're right on. I should have seen that or thought that. So yeah, it kind of depends on the publisher and the relationship you have with them.
Okay,
All just kind of doing what you do, nonfiction, you're researching a lot of facts and information. How do you reconcile quantity versus quality? How do you fight that battle? Because I'm sure you run across like, gosh, this is so, what do I cut?
Yeah.
What do I keep? What do I discard? If you find yourself having to make that decision a lot, and what's your philosophy and how you do that?
Well, I think certainly you have to make it. When I did Missouri Innovators, I started out with 300 minutes. The publisher said, well, you're going to need 4 or 5 pages per person. You're going to have a pretty thick book. So I cut it down. So I cut it down to 150. He said, now cut it down again to 75.
Yeah.
So I did that. But I did list some honorable mentions, so to get those over 75. But I think having people read and give me their response, that's to me part of the mentoring. Someone said, you know, I would have liked to have known more about this, or someone's telling me, I've read a lot about this person. I think you missed this section that you could add in. So getting the feedback is really good too. And the publisher, I will tell you if it's making sense or if there appears to be some gaps. So kind of a combination, but again, you have the responsibility. I have the final say for all of that. Yes, sir.
You talk about Charles Dickens, reminded me, one of my favorite movies is one called The Man Who Invented Christmas, which is based on his writing style of that and what he went through, figuring out the characters and things for that. I think it's a very good movie for writers.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
Great job, Paul. Thank you. Word of what he said, the reason why chapter 1 of Sarah Burning is what it is because I brought it here to the mentor hour to have people read. And when I did, John looked at me and said, I think you got chapter 1 right here. Because up to that point, I had no idea how to start the book. So, anyway. All right, thank you, Paul. Appreciate it. That was 32 minutes and 27 seconds.